Hello, besties and bosses. How y'all doing? Happy Wednesday. Happy live at our new time. How are y'all liking the earlier time? You have to let me know. Though we'll probably keep it at this because I changed it so that we could accommodate a client, which I love all of you, but obviously gotta make sure we get the client times in. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. We are going to talk about, I just want to make sure I can pull this up with the group. We're going to talk about what no one's saying about the trust recession and why your sales might really be down. I think this is a really important conversation. I think right now, sure, you have heard so much. Here we go. Okay, I can see this. So, no, this is our last live stream. Sorry, I just cannot multitask. I just want to pull myself up in the group so I can see your comments. But I think right now, I'm sure if you have not heard me talk about it, you've heard someone else talk about the trust recession. And I think this is, just seeing here, why is this not pulling me up in the group? I just want to make sure I'm actually live in the group since. Okay, there we go. Great. Say hi if you're live. Sorry, don't mind me. And if you're listening on the replay in the vault, thanks for bearing with me while I get us pulled up in the group. But I can't see your comments otherwise because of the way my reader is. But I'm sure if you've been in the online space, if you haven't heard me talk about the trust recession, you've heard other people talk about that. I didn't coin the term. I think it's just a term a lot of people are using. And I think it is true. We are in a trust recession. I think there's a lot of truth and also fear mongering around that and other recessions. If you join me for Words That Sell a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about we're kind of in an everything potential recession threat right now. I know, there's threats around the economy, there's threats around trust. I think there's just quite a lot going on. And so of course this is true. And so this conversation is not to say there is not truth in that. You don't need to think about that. Of course you do. And we've talked about that so much in this group. And we've talked about why that might be the case. If you haven't heard about that or you're curious, let me know and I can chat a little bit more about that. But I think what's important and the conversation I want to have today is that what I've been noticing for myself and with clients is when we hear things like there's a trust recession, I think this creates a story that people aren't getting results and that people aren't buying because there's a trust recession. And I feel first and foremost, it's just really important to be an example of and a model of people are absolutely still investing and buying, whether it's a trust or a financial recession. I don't think we're actually in that yet, but that has been threatening for quite a bit. And we might do another live stream on that. I did that a couple of years. Gosh, we've been talking about a recession for quite a while financially. I did this a year or two ago, but I think it's just helpful to know by the time a financial recession is announced, we've already been in one for quite a long period of time for that to be announced, which means if you're okay right now, you'll be okay even if they announce one, and it just means we're already kind of halfway through and towards the end of it. But that's not the conversation today. But I think what happens when we have these conversations is the narrative starts to be that people aren't buying, that you can't make money. And I think we also start to then, if we're not getting results in our business, start to look at things to be the scapegoat. And I really want to talk about that and then what is actually, I think, causing a reason for sales to be down. Because what happens is if we hear no one's buying, audiences are skeptical, the economy is shifting, it's harder than ever to get attention or to make sales, it's really easy to buy that in as truth. And so that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It also then, if you don't hear someone like me saying, no, I mean, we're having one of our best years ever in business. If anything, yes, there might be a trust recession. I might have to do more to build trust with my audience. But if anything, we're having a surplus or an overflow currently in business. I'm booking for wait list. Definitely not trying to lose weight. Wait list, and I don't want to help anyone with that. Wait list spots coming up later this summer. I have many clients who are having record-breaking months, having some of their best months in years, best launches ever. And I think that's I had my best month ever in 9+ years a couple of months ago in business. I think that's really important to speak to because, again, otherwise we hear these things and we think that means everyone is effed, no one's making money, no one's making sales, you might as well just give up, or business can't work for you, or this needs to be a reason to stress. And I think it's really important to say, yes, there might be a reason things feel more challenging than ever. There might be a reason where you feel like, oh, I have to work harder not harder and like burn out, but I have to do more in my customer journey or to build more trust, or I have to do more to create a sale than before. Things have definitely shifted from 2020, but that does not mean that you can't make sales. And there is something else that I think is really, really causing a reason for that. Before, I promise I will share what that is, and it's quite simple, we'll break it down. But before we dive into that, this part feels really important. what I think happens when we have these types of conversations, and this is something I've had a conversation with many clients behind the scenes, is then if your sales or revenue is down, the easy thing to do is to scapegoat the trust recession, the economy, the algorithm. Like, it's sort of like when we're like, oh, my content isn't working, it's because the algorithm changed again, or it's because the algorithm hates me, or it's because the algorithm sucks. And like, yes, like the algorithm has changed. Maybe the algorithm, makes it harder to get reach. And also, if we see people are still getting reach and content is still working, right, it's really easy to make that a reason or an excuse for our results, because it's just a human nature thing. We don't want to have to take on responsibility for why we might not be getting results. It's just always easier for us to blame something outside of ourselves. And I'm not calling anyone out. This is just all of us. It's just human nature. I was in a lifting class yesterday, and someone was frustrated with their results and with their weight. And they're like, well, I just started taking creatine, and so that's why I'm gaining weight. And it's just always easier to blame something outside of ourselves. And it's like, maybe that's true, maybe it's not true, but I'm pretty sure I know this much about creatine. I'm not a health, fitness, nutrition expert, but I'm pretty sure creatine doesn't cause weight gain. But it's just easy for us to do that. None of us, when we're not getting the results we want to look at what might really be the case. Yes, of course, the algorithm's shifting. Of course, the industry is shifting. Of course, we have to look at those things and not blame ourselves or make ourselves wrong all the time and shift with that. But if we see that content is still working, for just using this example, and content isn't getting the results we want, it might just not all be the algorithm. It might also be that there's an opportunity to look at messaging, or to look at shifting to update your content with what people are really wanting to listen to in 2025. It might be there's a positioning opportunity. It might be that what you're talking to isn't what people want to hear. Right? There's always there's usually something else to the story. And I think this is, again, so important, because otherwise we solve the wrong problem in business. And as a business coach, and when I'm supporting clients, and feel free if you have questions around any of this, and I promise, I know I'm like really teasing this out, I promise I will get to the thing, but this feels important for context so that I can explain why sales might really be down for people. But I think what's so important for me as a coach when I'm supporting clients is, my job is to help them identify and solve the right problem, right? To help them see what's going on, and not just to get into blame or victimhood, and also not to make themselves wrong, because sometimes I think for many of my clients the pendulum swings, and they're so quick. We'll use the algorithm and content example. They're so quick to just decide that their content sucks and that they suck, and not to look at what are the exterior circumstances that might be causing their reach to be down in a normal way. Right, there's usually some middle ground. But when we're doing that, it's really tough for us then to see the forest for the trees, and to understand what do we actually need to address to move the needle forward to get results in business, right? To continue to get sales, to continue to get big results. And so that's why this conversation is really important. Yes, the trust recession is real. Like, that's a real thing. And if we just decide that means we can't get results, we're kind of like, there's no point in trying, right? If we just, yes, the algorithms have changed. Yes, what's working in content has changed. But if we just decide that means content doesn't work anymore, marketing doesn't work anymore, social media doesn't work anymore, right? Like, there's just kind of no point in even bothering. And it really outsources our power. But it also has us then, when we're not getting the results we want, also sort of miss looking at what are the things we can actually adjust to get the results we want. And so this conversation is not to say there isn't a trust recession. There absolutely is. But it is to say, just because there's a trust recession or a financial recession or any recession, that doesn't mean you can't still get results. And that doesn't mean that that's the whole picture. And when I look at a lot of my clients, or just overall, when I look at people who are saying, I'm not getting sales, and it's because there's a trust recession and there's a trust issue in the online space, yes, sometimes that is the case. And sometimes the right gap for us to close is to close that trust gap by creating more nurture content, or bringing more social proof, or bringing in more validation, or bringing in more vulnerability, like bringing in things to close, to build that, bringing in more ways to build trust. Like, if you're a one-on-one coach, that might be offering a free call. If you offer a group program, that might be having more free value-based content, or giving people a look inside your program, right? That is something we are absolutely looking at. And what I am seeing quite a bit for a lot of people is, it's not the trust recession that's making sales down. It is not a trust issue with their audience and you. It's an issue with you trusting yourself in your business. And I think this is the harder thing to accept and to swallow. And I think it's also confusing, because when we're not in a so-called trust recession, if you don't trust yourself, if you don't trust your business, if you don't trust your offer and you don't back that, it's easier to miss that, because it is we need less trust overall to sell something. When we are in a trust recession, and there is overall, and we're also just saturated. Let's just call it for what it is. It's not only a trust recession. We are just in a very saturated time. We are in an information overload time. But there is also that, especially in the personal development space, I think there's just a bit of a trust gap. But I really don't think that is the only thing, and I don't think it's as I feel like I'm gonna get hate for saying this, but I really don't think the trust gap is quite as big as we think it is. I think it's really good marketing talk, and it's getting made to be bigger than it is. But I do think when we have a lot of different factors at play, when that is the case, and on the other side of our audience, we are secretly not really trusting ourselves, not really trusting our offer, not really trusting our work, that is going to affect everything. And so I think the real reason for a lot of people why they're seeing sales down is maybe when you didn't trust yourself as much, it was just a little easier when there was less saturation, there were less people were more trusting, and they didn't need to trust you as much and they didn't need you to have as much trust in your offer to buy something. That was less apparent when all of these factors are coming up. I mean, I talked about this in Words That Sell, the masterclass a couple of weeks ago. Like sales 101, the number one thing we have to remember is we have to be more sold on ourselves and our offer and our model and what we're doing than the people we're selling to. That's always been the case, but especially when there are these other factors at play, that's even more the case. And so what I'm seeing, and this is something I've had so many conversations with clients recently around, where what they presented is like, hey, my sales are down, this is what I think is going on. Look, for some of them, it really is a trust gap, just in terms of we need to do something with their marketing. For a few of them, the conversations we've been having is, I love you. This is something where we've got to do some internal work, because because right now what I'm seeing is you're really not trusting yourself, your business, or your offer, and you're really asking your audience to do all the validation to build up that self-trust, to build up that validation for you. And that's where the biggest gap is. And when we're in that place, it is a really, really tough place to sell from, always, but particularly right now. I'm just gonna see if, okay, no questions, but let me know if this is landing for y'all and if this is making sense. And this is, I really want to preface this because I feel like I'm caffeinated, so I'm a little amped up. I'm caffeinated, and I'm like living my best inner child life with all of my sparkly bracelets today that my sister-in-law made for me. She made me, this is such a side note, we're manifesting Taylor Swift going back into concert, and so she made me like 15 Taylor Swift bracelets that she just gave me when I went home. I'm just wearing a couple of them so that we can manifest that. So you can manifest with me. That's what these are. Okay, let me go back to the trust piece. So I want to be really clear here, because I know I'm caffeinated and quite animated about this, because I see this as just such an important thing, and this is such an important thing to skip over. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not giving anyone a hard time. Like, definitely, I realize this is probably one people don't want to ask questions or comment on. I'm bringing this to the surface because I just see what a difference this makes in businesses over any season, but particularly right now. And again, because I really just see when we don't trust ourselves and when we're struggling with sales, that combination, it is just so easy to have the pendulum swing and to either blame ourselves, right, and to dig ourselves into a bigger hole of a lack of self-trust, and to make ourselves I have so many clients where the work we're doing is them not being so mean to themselves. They are just so quick to put all of the blame on themselves and to make themselves this horrible piece of shit, and like that's our work around, and they just don't trust themselves in their business to get results, especially when things are challenging. But the other side of that pendulum that I really see is us just wanting to look for a scapegoat. And neither one of those is going to help you get more sales in business, right? If we're just saying it's the algorithm's fault, it's the trust recession's fault, it's the economy's fault, right? There might be truth in that. It is really helpful to know what is going on. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but this is so important to land the plane on. We need to know the circumstances that are going on. We need to not bury our head in the sand and to know there are things going on politically, there are things going on in the economy, there are things going on in our industries, there are things going on with our people. Overall, we evolve and shift as humans in terms of what we want. Like, that's so important for us to know so that we can evolve and adapt with that. But we have to be so mindful that we're not outsourcing our power at any given time as a CEO. and using that as an excuse or a scapegoat, that is no different. That is equal, like these are the equal ends of the spectrum. That is no different than saying none of that matters and none of that impacts my business, and I'm just going to take on all the blame myself and not trust myself. And particularly when we're in something like a trust recession, not only is it important to trust ourselves in our business, but it's really important to be able to trust ourselves to know how to navigate changes in the industry. And what I say is, more than trusting your messaging, more than trusting your offer, more than trusting your work, I mean, all of that's obviously important. Yes, like the sales 101, we need to be more sold on ourselves than we are sold on and our offer than the person we're selling to. All of that is true. But more than all of that, the thing that I would encourage you to play with and to check in with, that I see as the number one indicator for increasing sales and why sales might be down, is, do you trust yourself to spot the right problem and to solve it in your business? And I think that is why sales really get down. So yes, it's a self-trust issue. Yes, it's, if we don't trust ourselves, that's challenging. Yes, if we don't trust our work and our offer, that might come up in terms of like our messaging. That definitely comes up in terms of sales conversations. That definitely comes up with our willingness to be visible. But even within that, if we don't trust ourselves when things are changing in the online space to be able to identify and solve that problem, that is going to show up everywhere, and it's going to erode, again, our trust with ourselves and then our ability to get sales. Let me know if this is landing for y'all. Oh, I do not know how to pronounce your name, and I would love to know, is it Renok? She says, what does it look like when you're asking your audience to do validation for you, up and down based on results, for example? Up plus down based on results, for example. I think I'm understanding your question. Give me a follow-up question if I'm not understanding this. But what I find is when we're looking to our audience or our clients to validate us, a lot of times that's something where it's like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm going to post this and just see. I'm going to let the likes or I'm going to let the comments be the thing that validates me. And if I get a lot of likes today, if I get a lot of reach today, if my post does well, then that means I'm right. That means I'm good. That means what I'm selling is good. If I'm refreshing all day long, right, it's probably like I'm looking for that validation and I'm not getting that. That means there's something off with what I'm doing, instead of really neutrally looking at that for data, where we trust our message, we trust our work, and we look at maybe reach or likes or things like that to say, oh, interesting, this post performed differently than this other post. Why is that? I know I trust my message, I trust my work. Maybe it's in how I positioned it. Maybe it's in the way, maybe it's in the language I use, but it's not so much in my trust in my work, my message overall. I think we do this, if this is helpful, and let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Renok, but this is also something I see for clients happen a lot in sales conversations, where if we don't really trust our pricing or really trust our offer, a lot of times I'll see clients where it's like they're really hoping that if someone says yes to them, then that means that their pricing is right, or that means they have a good offer, or that means they're a really good insert whatever it is they do, coach, therapist, OBM, lawyer, whatever that job is. They're looking to someone buying from them, someone giving them money to validate and say you are good at what you do, where really we want to flip that around as business owners, where we trust ourselves and our message and our work and our offer. I mean, that's kind of how we want to sell, where if someone's on the call with us and there is a trust gap, there's a trust recession, they don't know us as well, they don't trust themselves. I think particularly for us who sell things like coaching, therapy, anything where we're asking someone to show up and do the work with us, there can often be, it's not just a trust recession, like in terms of the industry, there can be a lack of trust for our potential client in terms of them really trusting themselves to show up and get results. So if that's the case, if we're asking someone to buy from us to build our own trust up, right, that's a really slippery slope. Whereas if we're the person where it's like, oh, no, I trust myself. I know I'm good at what I do. I know this offer is great. I know I can support you. I can help you. And if you show up to do the work, like this is what I think about with my clients. Like I know if we're a good fit, I am a damn good coach and I'm excellent at both the strategy side and mindset side. So I know if a client comes to me and we're a fit, even if they don't fully trust themselves, if they trust themselves to show up for the coaching and to do the work, like we can make magic happen. Like I really trust myself to support them. I can't guarantee results, but I really trust that. And so that creates such a different sales conversation versus if I don't trust myself. I'm like, oh, I hope they validate my offer by buying it because then I'll know I'm good enough. Or I really hope they pay me X amount because then I'll know I'm worth that amount. Let me know if that makes sense. Renook says, yes, downate ourselves based on results rather than looking at what we can do differently from a strategic place. Exactly. It's exactly that. And so I think, again, this is a nuanced conversation because there is so much truth that there is a trust recession, or that depending on what you sell, that your audience might not trust themselves as much. But that is why if we're seeing sales go down, that is not the only part of the puzzle. The number one piece that will always be true that helps sales to go up is building that self-trust within ourselves is redundant, but that trust within ourselves, that we trust our offer, we trust our message, that we trust our ability to support someone and to facilitate and hold them through whatever it is we're offering and selling, and to get the outcome or result. Obviously, most of us can't promise outcomes and results, but in terms of us holding our clients through that, when we don't trust that, it is really, 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 really hard to sell anytime, particularly in a trust recession where people don't trust themselves. And then aside from that, if this is helpful, just to kind of recap what we were talking about, the other place here is when all of this is going on, if we don't trust ourselves as business owners and as CEOs to be able to zoom out and say, hey, I'm noticing a slowdown in sales, or hey, I'm noticing my reach is going down, or hey, I'm noticing I'm not bringing in the same leads I did before, and there is a trust recession and things change, and I'm seeing things are changing. If we don't trust ourselves to be able to look at the landscape and say, well, if that's the case, can I look at my overall business strategy as a CEO or with my coach to identify the right problem to solve and gap to close? If we don't trust that, business will feel really, really, really unstable, really scary, and really shaky, because we will always be at the mercy of, or the victim of, external validation and whatever is going on in the market, as opposed to, and that will make sales go down, right? It's not just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It then just becomes, well, it has to be a self-fulfilling prophecy because I don't know what to do to adjust, to just understand there are certain things going on that I can adjust and pivot with and still be one of the people getting results. It's kind of going back to that algorithm example. If we know the algorithm has changed, we can't look at our own marketing or content to see, great, if that's the case and my reach is down, what do I need to adjust to still get the visibility, to still bring in the leads, to still have my content work for me, right? We just become sort of a victim to the algorithm. And we feel very powerless, and then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The algorithm is down, so my content doesn't work, or in social media doesn't work. Kind of similar here. There's a trust recession, so sales are down, and I don't know what to fix, so that just has to be true, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, as opposed to, oh, the algorithm changed or whatever, and my reach is down, but I know and I trust myself to be able to look at what's going on, to see what's true and not true, and what I can adjust to make sure I'm still always getting results. And it's kind of the same thing with a trust recession and trusting yourself to see, great, so if that's the case, is this actually even affecting me? For a lot of my clients, this feels so important to say, for a lot of my clients, yes, there is a trust recession, but it is not affecting their business because they have spent years, or not always years, but they have spent time building up trust with their audience. I think I'm very aware of this, and it's something I'm mindful of, but I have been showing up basically every day for 9 years. This affects me a lot less because I've been building a lot of trust with my audience. But I do know if someone comes in cold, new to my world, this is something I want to be mindful of in terms of what kind of nurture material I might give them before having a sales conversation. But I think that's just so important to see that just because this is true globally, that it's so important that we look at our own businesses and trust ourselves and our businesses to give us the data and the information for what we actually want to adjust. And then if it is true in your business, again, just so I'm very much repeating myself here, but I really want to land the plane on this. Instead of then having the pendulum swing where we either blame the industry or the trust recession, or we blame ourselves, well, that just means I suck, or I can't figure this out, or like nothing gets to work in my business. Finding that middle ground of neutrality as a CEO to say, great, okay, so these are the circumstances. I can't necessarily change the circumstances. This is what happened in COVID, right? I can't change the circumstances. I'm not going to be a victim of this, but I'm also not going to place blame. I'm just going to get to neutral. Can I instead look at, where is this impacting my business? Where is this creating a challenge point or a problem or a gap in my sales funnel? What do I need to do to solve for that, to adjust for that? And can I just focus on that? Because that is the game we are always playing in business, and we will forever be playing in business. And the sooner we can see that and trust ourselves to do that, but also trust that that is just normal and that is how every single business in the world works, the easier and easier and easier it gets to continue to make sales. Okay, let's see here. What else can we do to navigate the trust recession? You named a few things: nurture content, more vulnerability. Can you say more about those things? Yes, I think what's really helpful, that's a great question. So this is more not trusting ourselves, which I will close out with a little bit of trusting ourselves, but this is more in terms of the trust recession. I think what's just helpful to understand is within your, whatever your offer is, understanding where is the trust gap with your audience and in your industry. So for example, in the coaching industry, I think and I'm just using that as an example because I'm a coach and I don't know what everybody does, but in the coaching industry, part of the trust gap has been people not saying who they say they are, people being really unqualified, people charging really high ticket and then not actually showing up to deliver on the back end. I think a lot of people got burned getting into programs that made really big promises. And I mean, I have clients who've literally shown up to things and the person who they paid wasn't there or was giving false information. So understanding what are the things that have severed trust. And yes, of course, like we can do more in terms of like nurture content and sharing social proof and doing more in terms of letting people see we are who we say we are. But I think also speaking to and addressing some of these things in our content and our marketing can be really valuable. So for example, I'm a one-on-one coach. I know this is on people's minds. And so I make a big deal in my marketing to talk about how I've been doing this for 9 years. I've been on over 5,000 one-on-one sessions, how I want to be in it with my clients. I'll share testimonials from them that aren't just about their financial results, but that are things like thanking me for going above and beyond or reviewing their content or holding space for them or like really wanting to be in there with them. I'll share about how clients have worked with me for 5+ years. And I do that to help bridge that trust gap, to say, I know what some of the narrative is. Let me help you see who I am, how I run my business on the back end. I've also done things, I've been fully booked for a long time, so we can't do this as much, but at the start of my business, I offered free coaching sessions as a way, like that was just the easiest way for someone to see I am who I say I am. And to this day, when we have, again, I can't do this a lot, but like with my masterclass, we'll do a free giveaway. With my Evergreen opt-in, we usually do a free giveaway once a month. So these are all, I still offer a free sales call and conversation where a lot of people at my level will only push people to an application or won't have a call. So I think all of these things, just as examples, are ways to, in marketing, speak to this, but also ways to, if we know people are just having a little bit less trust, can we put some things in place to help build that? So it doesn't have to be a free coaching call. I'm using that as an example of a coach, but it might be a free mini experience of some kind. It might be willing to get on a sales call. It might be having more transparency on your sales pages. I have a couple of clients in launches who have group programs, and we've done some Looms, taking people behind the scenes to actually show them what's in the program, sharing testimonials that speak to those things. So I think all of those things can go a really long way to help bridge that gap. And I think then this one is just kind of Captain Obvious, but I think we forget that when we consistently show up for our audience to share value, kind of without expecting anything in return, and to share our message and to do things, and we're really consistent in what we stand for, what we speak to, and how we show up, I think we forget that also builds a level of trust. I know there is, I've had people say this to me, one of the reasons they trust me is I am just so consistent and steady. And this doesn't mean anybody has to be perfect, but I think there is something in, are we constantly who we say we are when people have an experience kind of offline with us, but also do we keep showing up for our people when we say we will? I think there's a lot to be said for how we show up in our free marketing that builds or severs trust for people. All right, that was quite a mouthful, but hopefully that landed. If you have a follow-up question, let me know. I'm just going to see my notes here because I think, okay, so I wanted to speak to one piece here, and I think this is important just in terms of kind of building the self-trust up for yourself and your business. I think one of the reasons, yes, we're in a trust, like, it's sort of like we're in a trust recessions with ourselves. Like, yes, that might be happening in the industry, but in terms of that self-trust with yourself and how that might be really impacting sales, I think one of the reasons we have a self-trust recession, maybe that's a better way to say it, is more than ever, we are outsourcing our power and answers instead of listening to ourselves, to gurus in the online space, to people, to information on the online space. I think we are in such an information overload world, and it's overwhelming to people, but I also think without meaning to, a lot of, when we don't trust ourselves, it is easier than ever to go looking for the answer in secret outside of ourselves in a bunch of Instagram posts or inside of a course. And I think more than ever, because we have AI and things like ChatGPT, as much as I know a lot of people love using that, and I'm not like knocking that. I mean, there's ethical and environmental factors, but like I'm not knocking like the use of it, and we use it from time to time as responsibly as possible. But I think what happens with a lot of tools like AI, I think it's actually increasing our self-trust recession, because it's sort of like the ChatGPT went down the other day, and one of my friends made this joke. She's like, oh my gosh, what did everybody do? Like, how did everybody survive and write content when ChatGPT went down? And it's a joke, but it's a joke for a reason. I think right now we're in such a time where if our self-trust was already down, it is just being amplified, because if I'm someone who doesn't trust my business, if I don't trust my offer, if I don't trust my messaging, if I don't trust myself to solve the right problem, instead of sitting with myself and trusting myself to figure that out, or listening to myself, or looking at my business, or looking at my data, or waiting to get to neutral, or going to my coach, which I think is very different than a guru, right? Your coach is there to help like ask you questions and look at this with you really neutrally and help you to get to neutral. Instead of doing that, we're just plugging into things like AI and asking it to give us answers, which sometimes can be helpful. You know, I'm not knocking that, but I shared about this on Instagram recently. Something I always think about is not just what's the action I'm doing, but what is the message the action I'm doing is sending to myself. And so if I'm going to consume a bunch of content, if I'm going into AI, and the reason for that is because I don't trust myself to get to the answer. I don't think I'm actually good enough. I don't actually think I know how to do this. By me going to go listen to 5 podcasts, buy another course, go into AI, the message I'm sending myself and reinforcing is I don't trust myself. Inherently, I do not trust myself. As opposed to, I am really neutral. I have figured out, what I figured out is I have a messaging gap, or I have an opportunity in my marketing to really build trust, and I don't really know how to do that. That's something I struggle with. That's not a self-trust thing. That's just a skill gap. Let me go buy this course that closes that skill gap, or let me go listen to this podcast that closes that skill gap, or let me hire this coach that closes that skill gap. Those are hopefully that difference makes sense. And so there's nothing wrong with getting outside support or an outside perspective or investing in learning. I mean, I just wrote a post about this yesterday that I joked that I bought my success in business. I made $1.7 million from one-on-one in the last 6.5 years. I have bought my results in terms of I have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into education tools, coaching, and team support. But I've done so from a really neutral, self-trusting place, knowing that, you know, educated guess, these are the things that I need to invest in because I need to learn this tool, or I need support working through this mindset piece, or I need education on how to set up ads, for example, as opposed to I don't trust myself and I'm hoping one of these things will give me the answer, will give me the trust, will tell me the right thing to do. That is when we're outsourcing our power, and that is when we are reinforcing the message to ourselves that we don't trust ourselves. So hopefully that lands there, because I think the big thing here, if you know, Renux is very helpful. Thank you. Need to hop off now. Thank you for being here. And let me know if y'all have further questions on here. But if y'all know me, I used to have a podcast called One Question. And the reason for that is I truly believe that all of your success lies as a CEO when you stand in your power and when you remember you have all the answers inside of you. Yes, sometimes we don't have the skill set or the knowledge, or we need something reflected to us because we have blind spots. Absolutely. I wouldn't have a job if that weren't the case. Absolutely. We all need support. The answers inside of you does not mean someone's meant to do this alone. I often also say that scaling is not a solo sport, and we need that support. We need someone to hold us in all that we're holding, and to be a mentor and to help guide us around things that maybe, again, we haven't done before, that we can't see the forest for the trees or the label from inside the jar, so to say. And no one else can know what's right for you than you and your business, right? You and your business are always going to have the right answers, and no guru, not even ChatGPT, can tell you that. And we have to start to practice trusting ourselves and having some discernment, because that is, I think, the real reason sales are down for a lot of people. Yes, the outside circumstances can impact that, but the outside circumstances are, at the end of the day, just something for us to navigate and to evolve and to shift with. They don't get to be the reason, right? They just might be the reason we change and adapt. They might be the reason things feel more challenging or that we have to do something different. They don't need to be the reason that you can't make sales in your business. And so I think, again, if you're finding that that this is landing for you, I would just remember you don't need to have all the answers in your business. Of course, we do need to build trust with our audience, but that isn't about knowing all the answers for them. And that's also not about making that the whole thing. Remember, we also need to trust ourselves, our offer, and our work. And we need to trust that our solution is the best solution for people to get the results if they're a good fit with the challenges they have. And then at the end of the day, we really have to, just to recap here, we have to trust and know how to identify and solve the right problems in our business and be willing to iterate with our strategy from that grounded, neutral place. That is the thing that will always support your business and is what I have seen allowed me to continue. I mean, if anything, we're having, if not our best year, one of our best years in business, and what I'm seeing support clients to continue to have record-breaking months, to continue to sell well. I had a client who hired me whose numbers were down for their launch. They completely turned that around, and these are the pieces we're playing with. So hopefully that all makes sense there. I think I answered, just looking at my notes, one of the things I was going to say just is how to close the trust gap in your funnel, but I think we covered that with the question that I got here, just seeing here. I will say the last note I had here with closing that trust gap is, I think, some of that strategic vulnerability we've talked about in terms of like practically for the trust recession, but to tie it back into our conversation here, it's really tough to be strategically vulnerable and to really show people how you're walking your talk and to show people and take people behind the scenes and to show what's true for you and your clients, right? I think that can build a lot of trust as well. So it's not just like give more nurture content, give more value, but I think really showing people what's true for you and your clients builds a lot of trust for people. It's really hard to do that though if we don't trust ourselves and we don't trust that we're good enough and we don't trust that it's okay to share some of those things or that a little bit more vulnerable or our learnings, or that if we don't trust to say things, for example, to be able to say things like you're not going to get overnight results when we think we have to promise the moon and the stars or that we have the secret or something like that to be able to make sales. So I think, again, just seeing even with the practical ways to build more trust with your audience, it still comes back to trusting yourself enough to be able to implement those and to iterate in that way. And when you have those things together, that is what makes your business really, like, that's what makes you unstoppable. That's what makes you able to pivot. That's what allows you to continue to sell whatever is going on, whether it's a trust recession or an economic recession. That's what really allows you to continue to thrive. It's not burying our head in the sand, but it is also not blaming ourselves and remembering what the message you're sending to yourself is also going to be the message you end up sending back to your audience. And so I just always like to keep that in mind. All right, y'all, I hope that was valuable for you. I don't see any other questions here, so I will wrap this up. If you do have questions in the replay, drop them for me. If you're listening to this in the vault, you can always shoot me an email if you have a follow-up question. I love getting those from you and hearing from you. And if you're looking for support with this, whether you're looking to build your own personal self-trust in your business as a CEO, to learn how to get to neutral, to learn how to look at your business, to be able to identify and solve the right problem, to close that right gap so you can continue to sell and get those record-breaking income months. My clients do everything from grow to their first 6 figures to multi-6 and 7 figures, and everything from 10K to 100K cash months. Or if you're looking more at the like, hey, actually, I really trust myself. I'm really great at spotting the gap in my business. I actually know the right problem to solve is I need to build more trust with my audience, or it's actually I do need to update my messaging, or my marketing strategy is still kind of in the dinosaur years and what I was doing in 2020. And I see what I need to change and adapt and solve, but I need some outside eyes and strategic thought partnership. Those are both things I love to support clients with. I have been on over 5,000 sessions with clients and we have a really great track record. I would love to support you. I am fully booked, but we are opening up at least one week-long strategy intensive in July. And I believe it might have been filled already because I had some waitlist spots. So I'm opening up some waitlist spots for my ongoing one-on-one spots, but I do have a client who's going to be on maternity leave. So we might have an additional spot open up, if not in July, in August or September for one-on-one. So I will drop a link for a free coaching consultation. You can meet with me. We can see if we're a fit. If you're at all curious about working together, I recommend booking a consultation sooner rather than later, since my spots I do tend to be full. We only open up one strategy intensive, sometimes two right now per month. So that way, if you are interested, we can always put you on the wait list or give you a wait list spot for the first spot that becomes available. All right, y'all, I love you so much. I hope this was valuable for you, and I will see you next week. Bye.